Okay, let's talk about something that usually feels, well, a little intimidating: the strict, uncompromising world of technical communication. I am so incredibly excited to dive into this explainer with you today because we're going to unpack all those rigid rules and turn them into a clear, visual masterclass. Whether you're a student, an aspiring researcher, or a professional just trying to sharpen those publication skills, we all know the drill, right? The difference between a rejected manuscript and a published triumph almost always comes down to formatting, structure, and clarity. So let's break down the exact anatomy of a winning paper together using real published journals as our guide. To make sure we're doing this absolutely right, we're building our whole journey on an incredibly authoritative framework. This was developed by Assistant Professor Dr. V. Ramani Bai from UCSI University in Kuala Lumpur, alongside Professor Dr. S. Mohan, the Vice Chancellor of Puducherry Technological University. Their masterclass presentation on paper writing skills is literally our blueprint today. But we aren't just going to sit here and talk about their rules in theory. Oh no, we're going to look at actual screenshots from top-tier published journals to see exactly how these rules are applied in the real world. Here is our chronological journey for today. First, the art of technical writing. Second, titles and abstracts. Third, introductions and literature reviews. Fourth, methods, data, and results. And finally, conclusions and references. Let's jump right into Section 1, the art of technical writing. It really is a completely unique kind of communication. Think about how we usually write or speak. Everyday communication is pretty freeform, right? You can write a long, winding essay just to entertain or to ponder an idea. But technical writing? It is a totally different beast. Yes, the standard rules of grammar still apply, obviously, but there are strict, precise formats you absolutely have to follow. You are writing to communicate scientific knowledge efficiently. That means every single part of a research paper, from the title page all the way down to the references, fulfills a highly specific purpose. So to succeed, we really need to understand what each individual section is actually meant to do. Moving on to Section 2, titles and abstracts. This is your crucial first impression. Take a look at this real-world example from the journal Applied Water Science. It's a paper titled Nitrogen Removal in Integrated Anaerobic Aerobic Sequencing Batch Reactors and Constructed Wetlands System by authors Risco Acefa, Ramani Bai, and others. Just look at the precision of that title structure. According to our guiding framework, a title needs to be concise and descriptive enough so the reader grasps the main issue immediately. But, and this is key, it shouldn't try to be a full summary. Notice how the first word and proper nouns are capitalized, and check this out, there's a deliberate absence of a full stop at the end. This is a flawless execution of title formatting. You know, Winston Churchill actually summed up the necessity of our next section perfectly. He said, "Please be good enough to put your conclusions and recommendations on one sheet of paper in the very beginning of your report so I can even consider reading it." That quote completely nails the modern reader's mindset. The ultimate goal of scientific writing isn't to force someone to read your paper from start to finish. It's to inform or persuade them as efficiently as humanly possible. Someone might read your abstract and literally never read the rest of the paper. So that single paragraph, it has to do a massive amount of heavy lifting. So here's a massive golden rule. A good research paper is not a mystery novel. You absolutely must give away the ending immediately. In your abstract, you definitely want to state your objectives, describe your methodology, and summarize those results clearly in the third person. What you don't want to do is use I or you statements. Remember that nitrogen removal abstract we just talked about? It states straight away that the system removed 67% of oxidized nitrogen. It gives you the exact hard data right up front, and it usually does the whole thing in under 250 words. All right, Section 3, Introductions and Literature Reviews. This is where you set the stage. Think of the introduction as your navigational tool. You're giving the reader a roadmap. You're telling them exactly where you're going, why you chose a particular experimental route, and where you eventually ended up. It lays out the entire rationale for the study. And just like we saw with the abstract, you've got to maintain that objective distance. Keep it strictly in the third person. So you'd write something like, "The building covers 1,000 square kilometers," or "This study investigates," instead of saying "I investigated." Right after the intro comes the literature review. And there's a huge difference between a poor approach and a masterclass approach here. A weak review basically just describes past research, kind of like a high school book report. But a masterclass review, it is highly critical. It defines key concepts, compares different advantages, and cites multiple sources to identify a very specific gap. That gap is your niche. For example, in the experimental study on total coliform from the European Physical Journal Plus, the authors organized their review under 4 distinct, critical headings that clearly mapped out what was already known and perfectly set the stage for their own hypothesis. Moving right along to Section 4, Methods, Data, and Results, the absolute cornerstone of science. The Materials and Methods section is essentially a cookbook recipe. Precision is everything, because your results absolutely must be reproducible. For instance, look at these incredibly careful labeled sampling bottles. Next to that, you see the exact sterilization of an inoculating loop using a Bunsen burner. These are actual procedural screenshots pulled straight from that total coliform study. Authors use this kind of visual proof alongside their text, which, by the way, is written strictly in the past tense, so that any other scientist anywhere in the world could repeat the exact same experiment. The same logic applies when you're presenting data. Your graphs and tables, they are not there just to make the page look pretty. Take the schematic from the nitrogen removal study we keep mentioning from Applied Water Science. It's so incredibly detailed, clearly marking designated sampling points like SP1 and SP2 across the entire integrated wastewater treatment plant. And notice how this schematic isn't just randomly dropped into the text. It's fully, completely explained with a proper descriptive caption right beneath it. Once all that data is out there, you reach the discussion section. Now, our framework points out that this is often the trickiest part to write. So remember this cardinal rule. Definitely interpret your findings and compare them with earlier studies, but do not just parrot back the data you've already put in your tables. You have to explain the actual relationships between the observed facts and what that result signifies. And usually, you'll want to write this section in the present tense to establish these findings as accepted truths. And finally, we arrive at Section 5, Conclusions and References. Time to wrap it all up. Your conclusion needs to be brief, punchy, and completely free of any new information or new references. Here's a really cool mental trick recommended by the framework. Ask yourself, if you only had 1 minute, just 60 seconds, to explain to someone what you did and why your work mattered, what exactly would you say? That right there is your conclusion. Just restate your most important results, benchmark your work against others to show its value, and write the whole thing in the present tense, totally avoiding subheadings. Of course, no paper is truly complete with the acknowledgments and references. It's so vital to thank whoever helped or funded your research. Like the authors of our medical waste management article prominently thanked the Ministry of Science, Technology, and Innovation in Malaysia. Skipping key citations or using questionable sources will seriously tank your credibility. When formatting your references, make sure they're arranged alphabetically by the first author's last name. And a pro tip, if you have multiple papers by the exact same author in the exact same year, just label them clearly, like 1999A and 1999B. To put exactly what we just learned about citing sources into practice, we put together this synthesized reference list, logging the titles, authors, and journals we sampled throughout this explainer. You might even want to pause right here and jot down these high-quality sources for your own reading. We pulled from the experimental study on total coliform in the European Physical Journal Plus, that Intelligent System Application Review in Materials Today, the nitrogen removal study in Applied Water Science, and a few others. Compiling a beautifully clean, accurate list like this, that is the final hallmark of a truly meticulous researcher. Well, we have officially traveled from the precise wording of a title page through the persuasive efficiency of a solid abstract right down into the reproducible rigor of methods and the analytical depth of the discussion. With all of these strict tense rules, formatting structures, and real-world journal examples firmly in your toolkit, the only question left to ask yourself is, are you ready to write an award-winning paper of your own? I really hope this explainer has empowered you to look at your next blank page not as a frustrating hurdle, but as a perfectly structured opportunity. Keep analyzing those top-tier journals, keep practicing those rules, and I will catch you on the next explainer.